guys? Welcome back to YouStation 2. I'm here with good friend and classmate Carrie Ryan, and we're here to talk about master's programs. So, but first, Carrie, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I grew up in Connecticut, and I did my undergrad at University of Richmond. I graduated in 2009. I was a double major in biology and Latin American Iberian studies. And that's just a fancy way of saying I was a Spanish major. And then I worked for 2 years at Georgetown University Hospital, where I was an assistant to the chief medical officer and the chair for the Department of Surgery. Then I left that job and I came down to USF and I did my master's. And then I ran the research department for the Southeastern Center for Digestive Disorders and Pancreatic Cancer, and I did that for 2 years before I became Jeff's classmate.
Yay! So quite an extensive educational profile, so thank you for sharing that with us. So let's dive right into it, and I wanted to ask you, what types of master's programs are there available for people that are wanting to get into medical school, and what type did you feel is best for you?
So kind of when I was looking, and I'm by no means an expert on master's programs, but I was looking at what could better me as a candidate for when I applied to medical school. And so kind of what I ended up seeing is that there were certificate awarding programs and then actual master's awarding programs. And the best advice I got from one of the surgeons I worked with at Georgetown was to go to a program that would give me a master's degree. Kind of more as a contingency, because if you go through and get a certificate, what does that show for your future?
Right.
You don't, I mean, it doesn't make you any more competitive if you have jobs or anything like that. And I will say, me having a master's is what got my job after my master's program.
Okay.
So that was helpful. And for people that ended up not going to medical school, then they had a master's and were able to get more competitive jobs. So I think that was really important to me. The other good advice I got was go to a program that is associated with a medical school.
Interesting.
Because that will give you kind of a better idea of how that medical school works, and also they have an idea of how to educate medical students already, so they will know how to prepare you well for medical school.
Absolutely, that's terrific. So since you went to the USF master's program, what specifically drew you to that? What did you like about it, and what made you apply to it?
So what I liked about it was that it was a year-long program. A lot of the master's programs were 2 years, and that was just not appealing to me. Number one, finances. Number two, time. I was already 2 years out of college, and so I wanted kind of more the quick and dirty. And then looking at the curriculum, they also covered a lot of what you cover in your first 2 years of medical school in a year. And so it was kind of a combination of curriculum, time, and money were kind of what were the biggest draws for me. And even though I was an out-of-state student when I went to the master's, it was still a lot more affordable than some of the other programs.
I've heard there are some private programs that they're associated with medical schools, but the tuition is upwards of $40,000, and that's pretty spendy.
Yeah.
And yours was significantly less than that.
I believe for all 3 semesters, it was in the 30,000 range.
And that's for out of state?
And that's for out of state, and I think it was about half for in state.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrific. Okay, so then from your experience, how many medical students, or maybe what percentage from the master's program ended up making it into medical school?
Okay, so it's hard for me to know an exact percentage,
right.
But I will say the majority of the people that I know from the masters, and just kind of like people I'm Facebook friends with, they are either in an MD or a DO program.
Oh, terrific.
And so there's a couple people, but there was also a couple people that they decided medicine wasn't right for them due to their exposure from the masters.
Interesting. So I remember you telling me a while ago that there were a lot of people that dropped out initially.
Yeah, so I believe we had 250 people that started with us. So it was a pretty big program. And then after the first semester, we lost 50 people.
Wow.
But a lot of that was just, it was a very intense program. You're covering a lot of what you do in the first 2 years in a year. And some people just weren't willing to accept that challenge, I think. And some people also realized that medicine wasn't right for them.
Mm.
So there was a lot of loss because of that.
So you're saying the master's program is good in addition to helping you get into med school, but also good because you get a taste of what med school would be like? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's definitely a different curriculum in many ways. I think once you're in medical school, you have classes like doctor, and you have more of kind of the application of medicine. But the courses, I mean, I had some of the exact same lectures having been in the master's program and then going and doing med school at the same school.
That's
so it was very helpful. And I think also the other thing that was very helpful was learning how to study. And I know that is one of the biggest challenges when you start medical school, is kind of how do I absorb all this information in this little amount of time? And you have to learn that in the master's. So it's a little bit easier for a jumping off point for me because I kind of knew what study methods worked for me. And everyone's so different that was kind of a good trial and error time during my master's.
Terrific. I mean, I'm sure many of you know that there's a big change in studying when you go from high school to college. And then from college to med school is just another step. I mean, equal in magnitude, really. Like it's a whole nother ballgame. So it sounds like, Carrie, you're saying that the master's program helped bridge the gap for you between college and med school. And maybe in some ways it was a little more intense.
Yes, I think the level of detail I had to know in the master's and was tested on was maybe harder than it was in med school.
Interesting.
Because med school is more like the big ideas, the big pictures
The
and
concepts.
stuff like the important stuff where you kind of were more tested on the nitty-gritty details in the master's.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you feel like when you you obviously excelled in the master's program, did that give you a sense of confidence going into medical school?
Definitely. I kind of felt like I had an ability to know the material and have the background that maybe I wasn't as intimidated.
Right.
But I think in many ways med school is always just a little bit intimidating. Everyone is, pretty intelligent and everyone brings their own strengths to every class. So
For sure.
there's always a little bit of a level of intimidation.
So a lot of people do master's programs also to become familiar with the staff at the school that they're going to. Were you able to get any letters of recommendation from the teachers?
So AMCAS required that if we were part of a master's program that you get the program to write you a letter.
Oh, interesting.
So I had one from the program director, and then I also got one from one of the professors, and he's actually one of our big professors for second year. So it was kind of nice to have a friendly face, and but you had to seek that out. It was a bigger class, so you had to seek out relationships. I know a lot of people did research with people that also taught us, and so they were able to get letters of rec from those people.
Good. And what you learned from the master's program, were you able to apply that in your research shortly thereafter?
I think it definitely helped my understanding. I mean, we talked about, since I did research in pancreatic cancer, one of our projects we looked at the use of sulfonylureas and metformin and their prognosis with pancreatic cancer. So it was like helpful kind of knowing the mechanism of action for metformin and sulfonylureas and how that might play a role in either the protection from or being, or making pancreatic cancer a little bit more insidious.
Sure.
I think it definitely helped, and it also gave me a better idea when I was managing patients and kind of helping them through as their research coordinator. I had a better idea about kind of the etiology behind diseases and more information about their comorbidities.
Okay, good. Do you have any tips for people that are getting into to master's programs, specifically for pre-med?
I think treat it like a job. You need to go there, work your hardest. I I mean, for me during my master's, the majority of people were trying to get into medical school, and if not medical school, dentistry school or veterinary school. And so people are trying really hard, so you also have to try really hard to do well. And
you'd probably say not having a full-time job.
I would not have been able to handle a full-time job throughout the entire time.
Right.
Although I only had class for 3 hours for 4 times a week, I went to class because I'm a class guard. I'm even in medical school. But I would go to class. I would have class from 2 until 5, and then I'd go home, work out, and then I'd come back to the library and study until probably 11 o'clock. And then I'd wake up and I'd be back at the library at 9, and I'd study and then until class basically. And that's how I treated the year. And yeah, I mean, there was days that I wasn't as, structured, or I'd sleep in a little bit later, but I worked very hard during that year.
Well, good. That's great to hear, and it obviously worked out for you because we're classmates, and that's fantastic. So thanks for tuning in, and a big thank you to Carrie Ryan for joining us and sharing her knowledge and experience with us. So stay tuned for the next episode.